Hey guys, making a quick recap video on my cut leading into WPO. I had a couple people ask about it. Figured it would just be easier to make a video and post that for anyone that had questions or just likes to know how I go about doing things. So, leading into the meet, I was weighing around 250 to 252 most of the days. Um, that's just where my body wanted to stabilize. I didn't try to push it any higher. This is where it was comfortable. So I figured I would roll into the meet around 235 or so, because usually that's a pretty comfortable place for me to cut to, as comfortable as cutting gets. Still putting in some effort, but not killing myself. So anyway, fast forward to the week of the meet. I started my cut on Wednesday since we were weighing in on Saturday. I started my low carb. I actually did much better this time around than I tend to do. So on all three of the days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I kept the carbs under 60. The goal was 50, but a couple of days I had vegetables and that pushed me upwards of like right at 60 or so. But honestly, if I'm eating more vegetables, I don't really see that as a bad thing. Kept the water around 2.5 gallons. The goal was three, but again, life happens, stuff gets busy. Running errands or whatnot, you can't really drink 3 gallons of water and be stranded out in traffic. So I did a pretty good job keeping the water at least 2.5, the carbs under 50. As far as the caloric intake, I just made sure that stayed around roughly 80% of my norm. So I just bumped up, obviously, the protein and fats, mainly on the fats because those are easier to get in, being more of a dense macronutrient. So when I headed over to the hotel, I think I was around 245. So I'd already lost like 5 pounds just from the low carb, actually 7 pounds, just from the low carb and the water loading, which typically I don't lose that much. So it was very nice that it was coming off a little more smoothly this time around. Got to the hotel, worked on some programming, just relaxed for a bit. Later on in the evening, once I was done, like I cut my water off around noon on that final day, being Friday. Friday evening, hopped in the sauna. I was in and out of there probably six or so sessions, but the sauna was so intense I couldn't do 15 minutes. It was probably closer to about 10 minutes each time, and then I would get out long enough for the nausea to pass, make sure I wasn't going to pass out or anything like that, and got back in. And just from those 5 or 6 sessions, I was easily down to 231 or so. And then by the time I woke up in the morning, I think I was like 230, and I just hit a little bit of my portable sauna and came into the meet weighing 229 point something. So nothing overly complicated. I didn't manipulate the salt this go around. I just tried to cover all my bases with the water and the low carb, and then staying on top of my timing for cutting the water off and then getting into the sauna. That way, nothing was colliding with one another. And what I mean by that is sometimes people will get a little nervous and they want to jump the gun and get in the sauna a little too early before you've really let the water flush through on that final day. And at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with that, but the more time you have to spend on the sauna, the more drained you're going to get. So we're going to try and ride out that flush of that final day of water loading early on in the morning before I get in the sauna. So basically, if I'm still peeing, I'll wait a bit to get in the sauna because I want to naturally let all that go and not have to sit in that heat, just so I'm less fatigued come meet day. So anyhow, any questions, comments, concerns about any of your cuts coming up? I know most of you have the water cut document at this point, but if you need that, let me know. If you have any particular questions, I'm always here to answer them. So that's how everything went for the WPO. Definitely wanted my smoother cuts and being under 230 and being able to do that. Despite this last year, my body seemed like it really wanted to grow and continue to expand. Even though I did try to get some of the weight off a little earlier in the training cycle, it just didn't want to stay off. I would yo-yo 4 or 5 pounds, and then it seemed like once I got to a consistent level of intake, it would kind of settle back up around the 250 range. I don't like being that big, but I'm also going to put performance and in front of everything. So I could be a little uncomfortable during meet prep in hopes of competing better day of the meet. That's what off season's for. Off season, I'll try to recomp, shake some of this weight, make sure all my health markers are better in line, and hopefully come back a little bit lighter, closer to like 245 would be ideal for me. Anyhow, that's all I have for you guys. Hopefully it was helpful, insightful, educational.